Good evening. It's time now to open our regularly scheduled trustee meeting for August 9th, 2011. Thank you so much for coming. And Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stoker.
Here.
Mr. Wong.
Here.
Mr. Lang.
Here.
If we'll rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, normally we schedule a citizens' comment this period for those who have signed in. Nobody has signed in for citizens' comments, so we'll have another opportunity later in the meeting for those who would like to address the Board of Trustees. At this time, we have a presentation, Mrs. Boykel, if you would like to introduce them.
Yes, ma'am. The Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities has requested a short, brief presentation to the trustees in order to update them on their scope of services and their efforts in providing services to developmentally disabled residents of Butler County. Mrs. Jenny Vogelsang is here. She is an early intervention specialist for the Butler County Developmental Disabilities.
And I'm Tina Barrett. I'm the developmental specialist as well in the early intervention department.
So yeah, we're just here to share with you our campaign for this year and our annual report from last year.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're just going to show a video at this time.
Together with the community, the Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities supports more than 2,000 people, helping them live full, satisfying lives. Each year, the Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities focuses on an awareness theme. This year's theme is Together. Together, we support possibilities. Together, we accomplish more. Together, the future is brighter. The Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities provides early intervention services to more than 1,000 children from birth to age 3. Families are given opportunities to learn and help their child grow and develop.
Ava came into the program, I guess it's been 2 years ago, because she had respiratory difficulties and was therefore delayed because of a lot of hospitalization, and has then just had some diagnoses that enable her to be in early intervention. What is this? Who's on there? Princess? Is that Cinderella? A lot of what early intervention is really working with the parents and the child to help the parents give them different strategies to help their child develop typically. And so that we want to work those strategies into their everyday routines, things that rather than homework and worksheets to do and exercises, things that you can do that you normally do rather than anything extra.
If a child is given a bright start with support from an early intervention services team, they have a better chance of achieving successes later in life.
Working together with Suzanne, we do feel like Ava has a brighter future.
Currently, the board supports more than 150 people with disabilities employed in the community. They earn a paycheck, pay local taxes, and contribute to the overall success of Butler County. Bob has worked at the Fairfield La Roses for almost 20 years. Bob's success is due in part to the continuing support of La Roses and his coworkers.
He takes out the trash, he helps with bussing some of the tables, he changes the condiments on the table. He stays pretty active with us all day.
Normally we would have to bring a server in extra early in order to do that every single day. So having Bob here to do it, it's something we don't have to worry about. So it's a great benefit.
We're all very proud of him, and try to encourage him, which he doesn't need much of. He's always had a lot of determination on his own.
He's a good guy. I wanted to help him, you know.
So it's really been great. And with the help of the community, really. His co-workers, teachers. It takes more than one person to have a success story. Really, it does.
The board has a team of volunteers who support people with disabilities so they can be active in their community. Volunteers take people on grocery trips to sporting events or other recreational activities. Many times, true friendships are formed. Students in Miami University's Pi Kappa Phi fraternity volunteer with a group of local adults. The students sponsor a variety of activities, allowing people with disabilities to have fun and make new friends. It's through these activities that the fraternity brothers have formed a special friendship with Jessie.
I actually got to know her at one of the dances, I think was when we first met. And then since then, we just kind of been dancing away, right, Jess?
Yeah.
I think coming to college, you would find the bulk of us really had no intentions of joining a fraternity, but our outreach program is something that we hold really dear to us, and is something that we've been able to just sort of build upon. It's been a great experience for us all.
Jessie is amazing. She's one of my friends that I look up to. She's a role model. She has one of those amazing attitudes that it just rubs off on you. You can't not be happy when you're around Jessie, and those are the people I want to surround myself with in life. So having her as a friend means the world to me.
Working together with local school districts, health agencies, and doctors, families receiving services from the Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities have a brighter future. Working together with community businesses, the Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities supports people to accomplish more. Working together with volunteers, the Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities supports possibilities. For more information, visit www.butlerdd.org or call 513-867-5962. We're also on Facebook.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Did you have any questions?
Oh, just a comment, Ms. Vogelstein and Ms. Barrett. There are several people in my life I love very much that are clients of yours, and I just applaud the work that you guys do. Their lives are better off because your organization exists, so I just thank you for that.
I have just a couple of questions. Your board is the board that used to be the MRDD board?
Correct.
Right, we changed the name. Your presentation seems to center on people that were born with disabilities. Suppose you have a situation where somebody dives into the shallow end of the pool and ends up disabled. Is that also a person that could come to your board for help?
It would depend on the age of the injury and the severity of the injury. There's different assessments that we do to determine eligibility to see if a person or child qualify for services. There's a certain percentage that they need to be behind where you would expect typical to be.
So a teenager, say, who was in a bad car accident or, like I say, dived into the wrong end of the pool, might qualify for help under?
Yes, with a traumatic brain injury, yeah, under the age of, is it 21?
Under the age of 21.
Under the age of 21. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the work you do. Okay. At this time, then, do we have a motion to approve trustee meeting minutes from July 26?
So moved. I'll second it.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve payment of bills.
Also move.
Second?
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Boyko, requisitions greater than $2,500.
Yes, item 1, administration, $24,162.32. This is to Frost Brown Todd LLC for legal services through the month of June. Item 2, $3,868.83 to Global Gov Ed Solutions Incorporated, and this is to purchase network backup hard drives as part of our record retention, obviously access management of information. Item 3, fire, $190,496.44 to Horton Emergency Vehicles. Items 3 and 4, although made out to the same vendor, are for two specific purposes for this paramedic unit. One is to actually purchase the unit at state term scheduled purchasing, state purchasing, and then the other is obviously to equip that paramedic to Chester Township Fire Department specifications. I wanted to provide just a little bit of background on Fire Chief Guller's request to the Board of Trustees to consider and approve this supplement to life safety operations by implementing a second reserve paramedic unit into the 24/7 fire department operations. This newly purchased ambulance will allow a 2005 ambulance to be designated as reserve. Current operations of the fire department have 4 frontline paramedic units and 1 reserve. Chief Guller's proposal is to implement 4 frontline operational medic units and have 2 units in reserve. Obviously, all of the decisions and all of the recommendations that the fire chief makes is to reduce response time and increase response to potential life safety victims. Based on past trends, a second reserve ambulance will allow continuous, uninterrupted life squad service from fire stations 71, which is headquarters, 72, which is the unit over on State Route 40, U.S. Route 42, 74, which is the Beckett station, and 75, which is the station located on Tyler's Place Boulevard in the Interstate 75 interchange vicinity. In addition to the second reserve ambulance allowing continuous uninterrupted life squad service, it will also provide additional constant coverage to maintain acceptable response times. The fire department responded to close to 4,500 medic unit calls in 2010, and some of these calls required more than a single paramedic unit or ambulance to respond, multiple car accidents, injuries, etc. In an industry where delays in terms of minutes can cost life, the need for a second reserve paramedic unit to ensure consistent and timely service is critical. Dispatching out of district paramedic units increases response time by 3 to 4 minutes. So what that means, if there is a paramedic unit that is down at any one of these stations, dispatching another paramedic unit to a call within an outside district increases response time by 3 to 4 minutes. Obviously, those are minutes that life squad victims can't necessarily afford. Exactly. Every minute that passes without paramedic care, especially in the cardiac arrest victims, this is for strokes, heart attacks, the chance of survival decreases 7 to 10% for every minute that care is delayed. At 5 minutes after cardiac arrest, there's only a 50% survival rate. These are just a few statistics that the chief wanted to share with the Board of Trustees as you consider this purchase. And obviously the township wants to respond and continue the level of services to which the residents have become accustomed. Item 4 then is $14,554 to Horton Emergency Vehicles. This is to purchase options for the 2011 paramedic unit. Obviously, item 5 services, $45,984.61 to Kneisel Contracting Corporation. This is to participate in the Butler County Engineers Office retracing and restriping program and to contract with this competitive bid contractor for our work. And item 6 services, $5,084.80 to Bobcat Enterprises Incorporated, and this is to replace a existing 4x4 vehicle for parks. It's a Gator, and it is part of the capital improvement plan for this year.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve items 1 through 6?
Also move.
Second.
Discussion?
Reference item 3, Ms. Berkel. Just which or what kind of entity uses the most of our paramedic units in our township?
The 4 units that are currently frontline at stations 71, 72, 74, and 75, generally they are dispatched for the same amount of calls, around 500 a year. So it's very, our demographics, our density, our geography really does dictate that the paramedic calls are pretty much equal from each station that's dispatched.
Okay. Is there a particular entity that requires a lot of response?
Meaning of land use, a particular land
Yes.
use? Generally, some of the senior living establishments, because it's congregated, the need is greater for that demographic. Generally, those types of land uses do dictate additional calls and more frequent calls. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
If I could just offer also with respect to having a backup, these vehicles are like any other vehicle. From time to time, they need maintenance work done on them. They need to have their oil changed or maybe new tires, et cetera. And a person's life could depend on having that backup vehicle available when the first one's down, getting some maintenance pulled on them. We can none of us predict, of course, when somebody's going to have a heart attack and when that ambulance is going to be needed. So having some backup, I think, saves lives. If we're all done with discussion, Mrs. Williams, if you could call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, personnel items.
Yes, item 7, I appreciate the board's patience and endorsement of filling this position. I believe I've expressed in several public meetings and demonstrated just the complexity of our organization, the evolution of the personnel matters, that the breadth of the personnel matters and the scope of the personnel matters of the township does need to address with our 333 plus part-time and full-time employees, our 4 collective bargaining units, and just the evolution of regulations from a personnel acts, not only at the state and federal level. Our operations have become very, very complex. So this position, I believe, is warranted and necessarily demanded based on the operational perspectives of our organization. So with that, I'd like to request the board's consideration in hiring Mrs. Brenda Jackson as the Human Resources Director of Westchester Township, effective August 10th, 2011, at the annual salary of $69,800 with a 1-year probationary period, and of course contingent upon the applicable testing and procedures, and pursuant to the terms of employment that were included as part of your memorandum for this agenda item.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion then for Mrs. Boyko's discussion.
So move.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
You know, 2 things I really like about this candidate, well, there's a couple. One, her experience. She has a tremendous amount of experience in HR, but she is also a lifelong resident of Westchester. Grew up here as a child, graduated from Lakota schools, and never left Westchester. But then the other thing, I really trust our law director, Don Crane's opinion when it comes to HR personnel because of his background in that field. And Don says this is a very solid candidate. So I feel really good about Brenda and what she's going to ultimately do for the township.
Agree. We're overdue for HR professional, and Ms. Jackson is a good fit for this township, and that we are about the size of Hamilton, and that we've been operating all this time without a HR professional director. So I think this is about time.
Thank you. Mrs. Jackson does come with a really superior resume, and it's a great pleasure to me to see you out there in the audience. So if we're all done, Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Absolutely.
Thank you, and welcome, Brenda. If you'd like to stand up and let people get a look at you. We've been needing your help for a long time, and we certainly appreciate you being here.
Well, you know, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you. You know, I have been a lifelong resident of Westchester. I love this community, and I love having the opportunity now to say that I'm going to be working for this community. I have a real passion for human resources, and I'm going to ensure you that I will bring that passion to what I do here with Westchester going forward. So thank you again.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Boyko, item 8.
Request the board's consideration to transfer an existing employee from one position to the other. With the restructure of the Finance and Information Technology Department at the May 24th, 2011 trustee meeting, an administrative assistant position to assume and perform clerical support functions for that department was approved. I'm requesting approval to transfer Mrs. Kelly Bird to Administrative Assistant for the Finance and Information Technology Department from her current position of Payroll and Employee Benefits Coordinator at her current hourly rate of $18.92, effective September 6, 2011. Kelly's worked for the township since 2003, first in the capacity as a communications officer for our dispatch, and most recently in the HR division as the Payroll and Employee Benefits Coordinator. She has proven herself to be an invaluable member of our organization and employee, and this will afford an opportunity for her to work in a different capacity, but then also fill a tremendous demand and need for Mr. Keim and his new responsibility as the Director of the Finance and IT Department. As the board is aware, I will be requesting that we fill her current position of Payroll and Employee Benefits Coordinator as an HR specialist, and we hope to be bringing you potential candidates in the near future. There is a sample motion for your consideration and review. Should you please approve this item?
Thank you very much. Would you, anybody would like to offer that motion up?
Make a motion to transfer Kelly Bird to the position of Administrative Assistant for the Finance and Information Technology Department effective September 6, 2011 at her current hourly rate of $18.92, contingent upon successful completion of applicable testing and procedures.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion? I'm very pleased that we were able to fill this position from somebody already within our organization. I think it's a good fit. I think it'll work out well for everybody. Mrs. Williams, if you could call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Burkle, item 10.
Yes, item 9 has been removed. Item 10, another significant item for fire department operations that Chief Guller is requesting board approval, and that is to advertise for bids for video conferencing. As the board is aware, emergency response is training intensive, and currently the fire department conducts thousands of in-station and departmental training exercises annually. The in-house training permits vehicles, equipment, and personnel to remain in their respective districts, while the departmental training generally requires assembly at fire headquarters so that the entire department can be presented and retain the same information from a training and particular exercise. Thereby, with the departmental training where assembly has to be at fire headquarters, it then requires that all of the vehicles, equipment, and personnel in their respective districts be out of that district for whatever given time that training and that exercise must be conducted. Removing vehicles and personnel from respective districts, of course, increases response times, depending on the emergency destination, in some instances by 3 to 4 minutes. The fire department estimates approximately 73% of the departmental training and close to 40% of the in-house training, respectively, can be simulcast through video conferencing. Remaining in-stations and districts for training reduces travel, which equates to savings, specifically mileage and wear and tear on vehicles. Fire chief projected that video conferencing will save approximately $30,000 annually in fuel costs just by being able to remain of those 73% of departmental training in district. And so $30,000 annually in fuel alone and several $1,000s every few years on vehicle wear and tear. These pieces of equipment and vehicles are very complex, they're very large, they have a lot of moving parts, and mileage obviously affects those moving parts, and especially in service mileage. Using the reduced mileage and fuel savings alone, the return on investment for video conferencing is approximately 3 years. So with a $30,000 savings each year annually for fuel, this cost is projected to be about $85,000 to install the video conferencing, about a 3-year return on its investment. Pre-planning and construction of the fire headquarters equipped the building with the necessary technology, so the building is already equipped to house this master control of the video conferencing, and anticipation of the implementation of this cost savings measure. Unfortunately, I know that the fire chief has scoured possible grant applications in order to be able to fund this. But unfortunately, they are no longer available. Grants are no longer available for this categorical purchases. But I am pleased to report to the board that this particular cost will be assigned to the EMS fund. So it's not levy monies. It's EMS fund that's recouped from EMS calls and runs to hospitalization. And so there will not be any levy money utilized for this particular expenditure.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion then to request we advertise for bids for the fire department state video conferencing supplies and equipment.
So move.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Yeah, Judy, I applaud this move. I think it will save us money in the long term. And it's something we're doing in our various private businesses as well, trying to figure out how to do less travel and be more effective in a more cost-effective way. Did we look at anything like GoToMeeting and how that would compare to doing our own internal system?
I do not know. I could address that to the fire chief if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm just curious. No? Because it's a very cost-effective way for us to do our meetings. We have meetings regularly in California and Boston, and it's less than, I don't know, we pay that. Don't hold me to this. I think it's less than $20 a month to hold X amount of meetings a month.
We certainly can explore that if the board wishes to delay this. I know very limited knowledge of GoToMeeting kind of technology. My only understanding is that with the GoToMeeting technologies are somewhat limited in some of the demonstration purposes.
Yeah.
With the police training, or excuse me, the fire in-house training and departmental training, many times they're bringing in pieces of equipment, they're bringing in mannequins, they're bringing in items that are fairly large that may not be able to be broadcast or simulcast as easily as charts, data points on a PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. So that is my gut reaction, or I should say response to your inquiry, but we certainly can explore and assure that my initial reaction is correct.
Yeah, I don't know if GoToMeeting can handle live video feeds. We've never used that in my private practice, but I certainly would encourage it if I'm right on what it would cost. It could be a much more cost-effective way to accomplish exactly what the chief is trying to accomplish.
My initial reaction is I believe that the GoToMeeting is too limited technology to address the demands of the training that his scope is inquiring. But certainly if the board wanted to render a decision with a contingency, that we explore that, I can bring back to you whatever data.
Can we table this for 2 weeks and give us time to research it? Is there some pending thing that we need to move right away on this?
No, there is not. I just that this was presented to the board through multiple times, and I would have been helpful to have that.
This before. Yeah, we have.
GoToMeeting.
Pardon me?
Not this.
No, not GoToMeeting. I just thought of that as I was driving over here this evening, just trying to look for a more cost-effective way to accomplish what the chief is trying to accomplish.
Well, can I offer a suggestion? The motion we're making is to advertise for bids for the fire department station's video conferencing. If we could, couldn't it be implied in the motion that is before us now that this might be one of the things we'd look at, and you can, or do you already have the bids totally structured and you don't know if maybe it's just a matter of sending a copy to a local distribution for GoToMeeting so that they could respond to the bid?
Well, my understanding is the GoToMeeting is more of a software, and there is some technology that needs to be implemented, but nothing to the demand of the video conferencing concept that Chief Galler is desiring. So I think that a GoToMeeting software would not be addressed in the specs that he's designed. So I think that if the board wishes to delay it, we certainly can do that further research and see if other software is out there. I do believe that we will be able to bring back to you that I think that software its capacity is limited and to the demands of what the chief is necessitating.
I have no problem with waiting. We've gone this long without it. I don't see a problem in waiting a couple of weeks, but I also don't see any reason why we couldn't just add whoever is the local supplier of GoToMeeting.
I don't think there is a supplier. I think Judy's right. It's a...
there has to be someplace from which you buy the
we wouldn't have to advertise for that. We wouldn't advertise specs for the GoToMeeting software. We would just go and buy it and install it and operate it.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, if somebody were selling it, if we're broadcasting this request for bids, there's no reason why GoToMeeting couldn't respond to our bids if they can make our needs.
No, the bids are specifications.
Yeah.
So the GoToMeeting would not meet the specs as we are presenting them in the advertising.
Be a
So
totally
they would-
alternate option
Yes.
that may or may not work for us, and I think it might make sense to do a little research and see
Yeah.
if it does.
I would prefer, instead of
We just table it
amending.
instead of trying to push it into a,
I think Mr. Gallo's intention here is to have a training that will fit the departments,
Yeah.
not some generic video.
it's not an
Right,
office
DVD,
training. It's
correct.
equipment,
Right.
life-saving,
How to use them,
how to put out fires, how to save
repetition
lives.
training.
It's
Is
not-
that right? Refresher training? Maybe all those equipment that you don't use all the time?
Yes, not like one group of office personnel speaking to another group of office personnel
Certainly not
across the
that, no,
country.
it's certainly not that. But I think that, obviously this is a significant expenditure. If the board needs additional information in order to feel comfortable and confident in rendering the decision, certainly we can take a postponement. But I have to go back to my initial reactions. I think this is the capacity of GoToMeeting and all the other teleconferencing, video conferencing. I think teleconferencing are two different types of technology, and this is more the need to video and reproduce and re-simulcast and rebroadcast tapes and training.
I'd be surprised if they haven't over the years developed their technology to that level where they'll meet our needs. And that's not an intelligent or an educated statement. I don't know that. I would just be surprised if they haven't over the years.
Are you asking us to wait and put this on to our next
Tony
meeting?
doesn't have a problem waiting 2 weeks.
Plus, this internal conferencing, that will help Mr. Gallo to manage his fire departments, able to get one voice out, everyone get the message effectively.
Right.
So
I think it's an
That
important
can be
function. I
accomplished
think
with the GoToMeeting. That can be accomplished, but I think the bigger scope and larger criteria is that be able to do the training and have the
where you're taking
props
people
and-
outside to the equipment. And
I just think in general, it's better if we outsource that rather than have to maintain it and upkeep the equipment ourselves. And I think in the long term, we'll save, and the short term, we'll save significant dollars. If GoToMeeting can handle the chief's needs.
Is it the pleasure of the board then that we wait and put this issue on the next meeting's agenda and ask staff to look into GoToMeeting to see if that would meet their needs?
that's fine. We can table this and come back in 2 weeks and give us
Okay.
your...
We'll move on then to item 11.
Item 11 is a motion not to object to a new liquor permit for Dolgan Midwest LLC, doing business as Dollar General Store. This particular permit, not to object permit request is at 8206 Cox Road.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to not to object?
I'll make a motion that we not object.
Second?
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you could call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, item 12.
Motion not to object to a new liquor permit for Dolgan Midwest LLC, doing business as Dollar General Store, and this location is 10887 Princeton Glendale Road.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Also moved.
A second?
Discussion?
So this means you can buy dollar wine at the Dollar General store?
Yeah.
Maybe a little over $1. Either that or it's a very small container. Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Okay, we now have first reading of resolutions. Mrs. Boyko.
I request the board's consideration to skip items 13 and 14. We do have public hearings scheduled at 7 p.m. for those two items, and the first reading, we'd like to conduct the first reading during the actual public hearing.
Okay. Then I think we can just go right on to citizens' comments. If there is anybody in the room who would like to address the township trustees on any...
Prior to that, may we do the emergency readings of items 15, 16, 17?
Oh, okay. Thank you. If you want to I'll entertain a motion then to declare resolution.
I have to read them first.
Go ahead, thank you.
These three items 15, 16, and 17, resolution number 16, 17, 18, 2001 respectively, all relate to identifying, reallocating balance remains from current borrowings to the Westchester Safety Services roof project. The board may recall probably 6 months ago, the lion's share of the Westchester Safety Services roof project was being funded by borrowing remaining balance of the borrowing from the library project. In an effort to identify additional resources for the Westchester Safety Services project, Mr. Keim, our Finance Information Technology Director, was able to identify other balance funds that could be utilized and reallocated for this particular project. So it really was a great find on his part. What I'd like to do is for emergency reading for resolution number 16-2011, we'd like to be able to reallocate park improvement bond proceeds, namely from the urban park project, to the Westchester Safety Services project. And so authorizing the expenditure of remaining park improvement bond proceeds and declaring an emergency and dispensing with the second reading.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion then to declare.
We'll read them all, and then we'll go after citizens' comments.
We don't want to do one at a time?
Well, we will read them all, and then after citizens' comments is when you actually declare an emergency and make the vote. This is any questions or any?
Certainly. Any questions for clarification? Thank you.
Item 16 is regarding emergency reading for resolution number 17-2011. The same explanation I provided, except these are road improvement bond proceeds that can be reallocated to the Westchester Safety Services roof replacement and steel upgrade project. And these are funding a fund balance remaining from a Union Center Boulevard Millhauser Road widening. Emergency reading for resolution number 17-2007, authorizing the expenditure of remaining road improvement bond proceeds and declaring it as emergency and dispensing with the second reading.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or clarifications?
No.
Okay.
And item 17 is emergency reading for resolution number 18-2001, and this is to reallocate remaining borrowings for the fire truck acquisition bond proceeds project, and that was to purchase the 100-foot aerial ladder truck. Because Chief Guller was able to, we were able to afford prepayment, there were some incentives, and the cost of that aerial truck was lowered significantly. And so we did have some borrowing remains left. Emergency reading for resolution number 18-2011, authorizing the expenditure of remaining fire truck acquisition bond proceeds and declaring an emergency and dispensing with the second reading.
Thank you. At this time, do you want to do citizens' comments?
Yes, we have time.
We have plenty of time before the hearing. At this time, if there's anybody who would like to address the trustees, any resident or property owner or business owner, if you'd like to come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bruce Jones, and I live at 5685 McCarthy Court. And regarding the last three items, 15, 16, and 17, Judy, if I heard you correctly, I understood you to say that the money would be used for safety services projects. However, I was curious in learning what what's the amount of the bond proceeds from these three areas. What type of dollar amount are we talking about? Do you have that breakdown by chance?
Yes, I think we do.
We can address it during.
We'll address it during our trustee comments. That's all included in the motions.
Okay, very good.
I mean, in the resolutions themselves.
Thanks, Bruce.
Would anybody else like to address the Board of Trustees? Okay.
May I recognize Mrs. Joe Stetzer? He's a deputy auditor from Butler County. He's in a present meeting tonight to answer any questions anybody like to know.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Joe.
Okay. Shall we proceed now to the vote on the emergency resolutions? If so, I will entertain a motion to declare resolution number 16-2011 an emergency and dispense with the second reading.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution number 16-2011 as read and declared as an emergency.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to declare resolution number 17-2011 authorizing as an emergency and dispense with the second reading.
So
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
I'll entertain now a motion to approve resolution number 17-2011 as read and declared an emergency.
So move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to declare resolution number 18-2011 as an emergency and dispense with the second reading.
So move.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams?
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion then to approve resolution number 18-2011 as read and declaring it and declared as an emergency.
So move.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Mrs. Boyko, do we need to take a break, or shall we go on with the first reading on item 13?
We cannot start the public hearings until 7 because they were
So we
advertised
need
at 7
to
p.m.
wait till
But
then.
we have
Okay.
discussion items and trustee comments. If the board's pleasure, I can address the question that was...
Mr. Jones wondered what was the dollar amounts in the resolutions, just...
Yes. Respectively, the park improvement bond proceeds, we have a balance remaining of about $220,000 from the urban park. Regarding item 16, the balance remaining from the road improvement bond proceeds, specifically the Union Center Boulevard Millhauser Road widening project, there was approximately $527,000 remaining. And with the fire truck acquisition borrowing balance, approximately $86,000 remaining, totaling about $833,000, which would be allocated to the Westchester Safety Services roof replacement and structural steel upgrade project. The total project for the roof replacement and structural steel upgrade is about $2.65 million, and that is a 188,000 square foot building with a large span, of course, and the need to improve the steel upgrade is significant as well. The total cost of the project is being funded by the $1.6 million that remain from the library project. This $830-some thousand for these reallocation of these three fund balances you just acted upon. And then the additional balance of the project will be funded through the 219 fund, which is the State Route 747 TIF fund. And proceeds from the pilots of those properties are deposited into the 219 fund. And there is a balance to secure the remaining amount necessary to complete that project.
Thank you. Are there any trustee comments that you'd like to make at this time?
I want to just bring to the citizen that our township have lots of amenities that people enjoy in the summer, such as our Kinder Park amphitheater. I think that is one of the best things we built. That people can go there on Saturday, enjoy free music, free music, of course, and beautiful park. And then on Thursday, we have the music on the square. And there are lots of activities going on. On weekends, we have farmers market at Union Center. There are all kinds of people out there walking, running, using the bike path, walking path. It's just a great community.
Thank you. Mr. Lang?
I have no comments.
I don't either at this time. We can take a break then before we come back to our, unless you wanted to. We don't need an executive session, no. So we will take a break then and we will close our regular meeting at this time since we have no executive session. And we will convene our public hearing at 7 o'clock with respect to where we will address the text amendments to the Westchester Township zoning resolution. So
The reason we do at 7 is because it was advertised.
it was advertised at 7. We cannot do it earlier than 7 o'clock. We can do it later, but we can't do it earlier. So that,
Roll call to adjourn?
we probably need a motion to adjourn our regular meeting.
Second?
Discussion, Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Okay, so we will reconvene at 7 o'clock.
Open public hearing.
We're going to declare public zoning for ZTA 01-11 zoning text amendments for Westchester Township trustees open. Brian, if you could provide us with a presentation for the text amendments.
Yes, thank you. This is zoning text amendment 01-2011. These are for text amendments to the Westchester Township zoning resolution. The applicant is Westchester Township. You can recall back on June 14, 2011, this board initiated these text amendments to the Westchester zoning resolution regarding the following items. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on these specific items, but I just want to state the general items. Sexual-oriented businesses, internet sweepstakes establishments, methadone clinics, commercial and recreational vehicles, and some general updates that we've noticed over the years that we'd like to correct at this time. For sexual-oriented businesses, if you could recall back in 2003, changes were made to the Westchester zoning resolution limiting sexual-oriented businesses to M1 and B2 zoning districts in a specific portion of the township that is west of State Road 747 and south of Port Union Road. Due to some changes since then with the Ohio Revised Code and consultation with our expert that we spoke to, Alan Weinstein, these proposed amendments will further define the sexual-oriented businesses regulations and further protect the township from any potential negative effects from these types of businesses. The proposed amendments will still restrict sexual-oriented businesses to the same portion of the township, being south of Port Union Road and west of State Road 747. However, in addition, we'll restrict them further off of each of those roads, 150 feet from each of those roads back from 747 and Port Union roads. And then the proposed amendments will continue to prohibit these uses within 500 feet of a church, school, daycare park, and those type of other types of uses, residential areas. And then here's just a map illustrating the section of the township. There you can see Port Union Road to the north, Princeton Glendale State Road 747 to the right of that red line. You can see the city of Fairfield to the left, to the west of it. So the area inside the red dashed line is the area that will be allowed for these type of businesses. Then within that area, the as you can see here, M1 light industrial and B2 zoning districts would be restricted to those specific areas of the township. And this is in the southwest corner of the township. Regarding internet sweepstakes establishments, I believe we had a work session a while back. We had our legal counsel present what what his findings were. But basically, this is a new use that's emerging into this part of the country, this part of the state. It's basically a business where somebody can go in and purchase an internet or phone card that could be used at computer terminals to play computer games such as slot machines, other type of those type of games. State legislature has not made a specific ruling on this, whether or not this is constituted as gambling. So back in February of this year, February 8, 2011, trustees enacted a 6-month moratorium prohibiting the approval of this use, and then just last month further extended it on July 26, 2011. But basically the proposed text amendments would put a definition to an internet cafe and then internet sweepstakes establishments, pretty much separating the two, allowing the internet cafes such as Starbucks or Kinko's, whatnot, that actually have that type of use, and to further define the internet sweepstakes establishments. And then we'll add a proposed use table to the zoning resolution, which would specify that internet sweepstakes establishments are not permitted in any township zoning district. Excuse me. Here's a couple photos of some internet sweepstakes establishments that we found online, so you can kind of get a flavor for what they might look like. I see several terminals around the business. The next portion of the text amendments, the next component is methadone clinics. Our research suggests that there's potential negative effects that come along with these methadone clinics. So therefore, the proposed text amendments will limit the methadone clinics to the same area of the township as sexual-oriented businesses would be located, being west of 747 and south of Port Union Road, also within the B2 and M1 zoning districts as it's labeled on the Westchester zoning map. Once again, here's a illustration, and also 150 feet off of each of those roads as well. The next component is commercial and recreational vehicles. If you can recall, this board enacted or passed Resolution 06-2011 that regulates oversized vehicles within the right-of-way in the township in residential neighborhoods. These proposed amendments will allow consistency across the board within the right-of-way and on private property, defining, using the same definitions and using the same standards within the right-of-way and on private property. Commercial vehicles will be prohibited from residential and agricultural uses unless it's providing a service at the time or it's stored within an enclosed building. And then recreational vehicles will be limited to a total of 3 for each property, one of which would have to be or would be located in a enclosed building. One would be allowed to be located on the side of the structure, residential structure, and no more than 2 could be located in back. But you can only have 2 outside of the structure at any given time. Temporary parking would be permitted, but limited to 48 hours in any 30-day period. And then here's some illustrations of the type of commercial vehicles that we're looking at and recreational vehicles. See there, it's stored in the front yard in that illustration. And then as far as this general updates, if you can recall, several years ago, there used to be a planning and zoning department. We changed our name to the Westchester Community Development Department. The Westchester zoning resolution refers to planning and zoning department throughout the resolution, and also refers to director of planning and zoning. So we'd just like to clean that up to reflect the current name of the department. It will also correct several typographical errors that we noticed over the years, numbering inconsistencies, and it would also authorize staff to correct any formatting inconsistencies that we may discover over the years moving forward. Wouldn't be changing content or policy, but if we see a numbering that's a little out of order, we can just correct something like that. And then the general update amendments do not reflect any policy changes to the Westchester zoning resolution. So once again, these are the 5 different components. The Butler County Planning Commission had a public hearing at their July 12, 2011 meeting, made a favorable recommendation for the proposed text amendments. They did recommend one condition, that a definition be added for methadone clinic to Article 9. The Westchester Zoning Commission also had a public hearing at their July 18, 2011 public hearing, and recommended approval as well. I just want to note that the Zoning Commission did take into consideration the Butler County Planning Commission's recommended condition of a definition for methadone clinic, and they felt that it was not necessary at this time because the wording that's in place or that's recommended would be sufficient to define it accordingly. So this is the first reading tonight. At the second reading, trustees are to accept the Zoning Commission's recommendation of approval, approve with modification, or deny the proposed text amendments to the Westchester zoning resolution unless additional information is necessary. I could entertain any questions at this time regarding the text amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Bierman. Do we have any questions for clarification?
Just one thing that was brought to my attention by Mr. Carl Roman. One of our sign regulations for sexually oriented businesses states, no merchandise or pictures of the products or entertainment on the premises shall be displayed in window areas or any area where they can be viewed from the sidewalk or street in front of the building. His question was, what happens if you're on a corner lot? And it's my understanding in our zone, we define a corner lot as having 2 front yards, and that would be considered frontage, and that would not be allowed on either side. Is that correct?
That is correct. On a corner lot, there would be 2 front yards.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
Nope.
Hearing none, since the Westchester Township Board of Trustees are the applicant and initiated the text amendments, there will be no applicant's presentation. If anybody attending this hearing would like to make comments, do we have any proponents of these text amendments that would like to come forward? Do we have any opponents of the text amendment changes that would like to come forward? Proponents, opponents. Somebody would simply like to make a comment. Mr. Roman, if you would like to come up and
Carl Roman, 8285 Middle Drive, 39-year resident of Westchester. Just a question. Commercial vehicles. In many cases, a resident will own a business to which he drives a pickup truck or a large van with his business's information on the side or top or wherever, and yet he uses that for transportation to work. It seems a very logical use for a vehicle that may be larger than, 84 inches that I read in the thing. So I just want to bring that up as a question that, a man driving his pickup truck home in the evening, should that be a problem for people?
it sounds like you're mashing together 2 different things. The wide commercial, and Mr. Berman, would you like to address the difference between the wide commercial vehicle on the road and a commercial vehicle parked on somebody's private property?
Yeah, I think this text amendment is more geared toward the flatbed truck, the larger commercial vehicle that we saw in some of the pictures here, and not so much as the person that's on call driving his truck home to have in case he has to go out further. So.
Okay. I just want to bring it up. Thank you much.
Thank you. Anybody else like to make a comment? Neutral, pro, opponent? If not, do the trustees need any more clarifications, any more questions?
No.
Okay. Would the staff then read give us the first reading of the resolution?
It's resolution number 14-2011, resolution adopting text amendments to the Westchester Township zoning resolution concerning sexually oriented businesses, internet sweepstakes establishments, methadone clinics, recreational commercial vehicles and trailers, and general updates to reflect department name change and to correct other typographical errors and numbering inconsistencies. Now therefore be it resolved, the Westchester Township Board of Trustees does hereby concur with the recommendation of approval of the Westchester Township Zoning Commission and does hereby approve the proposed text amendments described in Exhibits A through E of this resolution to the Westchester zoning resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bierman. At that time, we reach the end of this public hearing. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing for ZTA 01-11 zoning text amendments.
So move.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you call the roll.
Mrs. Stover?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Okay, we will now declare open the public hearing for Westchester Township's governance and administration for licensing of sexually oriented businesses and employees. So, Mr. Bierman, if you could do a presentation on the policies and procedures.
I'm going to let Mary Ann Santel from our department make this presentation. So I'd like Mary Ann.
Got our PowerPoint ready. This is the public hearing, as Brian said, for the licensing of the sexually oriented businesses. Sorry. The purpose is, of course, to promote the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of Westchester citizens. It's also to establish reasonable regulations to prevent the negative secondary effects that these types of businesses carry. It is not, however, to impose limitations or restrictions on the content of any sexually oriented materials that are protected by the First Amendment. You probably noticed when you went through this very lengthy resolution that at the beginning there's a lot of recital on different cases that document these negative secondary effects that these businesses have. Whereas the zoning text amendments are for locational, which is where in the township it can be located, the development standards, the signs that we were talking about, those fall under the text amendments. The licensing resolution would do the operational portion of this, meaning that the employees would be licensed, the business itself is licensed. It also talks about the layout of the interior of it and the public areas. In 2003, as Brian mentioned, we had a resolution in place for licensing. That resolution pertained to only adult cabarets. If adopted, this new resolution expands that to all sexually oriented businesses. So that would be the adult cabarets, the adult bookstores, adult video stores, that type of thing. Again, licenses will be required for all businesses and for all employees. And something new, whereas the existing resolution, it does have renewal, but it's kind of wrapped into the original application. And with this resolution, all the licenses for new and renewal would be separate. And that's both for the actual business and for the employees. It also, the legislation allows townships the authority to apply criminal sanctions for any violation of these licenses. And that's something new to this resolution. It also allows, or will allow, for the background investigation, the criminal background investigation of the owners of the SOBs and of the employees of these businesses. It establishes a fee schedule for all the licenses, and that's both for the renewal and for new. A new business license is $500, the renewal is $380. The new employee license is $95, and the renewal is $50. And we did a very extensive fee study on this to come up with these fees. PowerPoint, it's backwards. The licensing also establishes an inspection routine for all applicable departments. These would be for no more than 4 times a year. Has to be during regular business hours and areas only open to the public. And these departments would be, of course, the Community Development Department, the Police Department, the Fire Department, and also the Butler County Health Department. The resolution specifically details reasons for the suspension or revocation of any business license as well. Some other operational aspects, I was talking about these at the beginning. It regulates live entertainment and the performances, the hours of operation, lighting levels inside, the floor plan and layout. And it also reiterates the regulations pertaining to the location and development standards that the text amendments. So it's very important that, that this be adopted in conjunction with the text amendments. They really do go hand in hand. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
No.
I have a question. Seems to me I remember there was at least one business that was kind of grandfathered in, video store. Do they have to get a license, or are they grandfathered in such that they don't even have to get a license?
I believe that they are grandfathered in.
So they're just sort of outside
And you are correct,
the
Ms. Lynn.
location and the license.
Right. If they expand, however, then they would have to.
You'd have to expand into the
Correct.
appropriate location. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Madam President, I request the board's indulgence at this time because a lot of the the licensing for the sexually oriented businesses and employees are going to be administered and enforced by the police department as well as the community development department, the health department, the fire department. I thought it might be an opportune time for Chief Niehaus to address the board, and perhaps you have some specific questions regarding the application process and the enforcement process.
Thank you. Chief Niehaus.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you this evening. First, I don't know if there's any questions before I start. Obviously, as you heard, there's the licensing requirement, the background investigation. The police department has been involved with the process of going over the amendments and changes, and is very aware of the responsibilities that will be placed on us. So we're in a position to carry out everything that you see that has been presented to you in order to make sure this moves smoothly and in the right manner.
Any questions?
No question.
I had one. Because of the setup of this structure, if on, say, a background check, we find the person engaged in, I don't know, nefarious conduct, et cetera, would that then be a reason to deny a license and to deny them the opportunity of having an establishment in our township?
Actually, I believe so. The decision, I believe, my understanding is made by the Community Development Director. The police department will conduct the background investigation and provide that detailed information to community
It's not
development.
like the liquor license where if we object to it, it goes to some other board or process to make that determination of the courts.
Right, it's
Because we would have the decision here, or one of our, whichever governing entity could make the decision to say, no, you clearly have violated the requirements under our license. You can't have a license. If you can't have a license, you can't have a business.
That's correct.
Just wanted to be clear.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But Chief, there are very specific standards on what you can evaluate in terms of issuing or not issuing that license. There's nothing to be arbitrary or discretionary, really, and I think it's very, very formally laid out.
It's spelled out very clearly.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Now, would anybody like to come forward and speak in favor of these licensing protocols that we're presenting for public purview here? Would anybody like to speak up against the licensing protocols presented? Would anybody just like to make a general comment on the licensing of sexually oriented businesses? No? Not even Mr. Zoll? Okay. Do you need any clarification?
I do not.
Mr. Lyons? Okay. Brian, if you would like to then give us a first reading of the resolution.
Resolution number 15-2011, resolution governing sexually oriented businesses and employees pursuant to sections 503.51 and 503.52 of the Ohio Revised Code and as authorized by the Township Limited Home Rule provisions of Ohio Revised Code Chapter 504. And therefore be it resolved that the Westchester Township Board of Trustees does hereby agree to the following guidelines. And there's a series of 27 sections and 28 pages that specify these specific regulations.
Any questions?
No.
Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this hearing.
Also moved.
Second?
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
I'd like to thank you all for attending. That concludes our business for the evening.